the story in whatever time we have, just everything, where you were born, how you grew up, how you became this amazing, beautiful, talented, and very successful woman.
Wow, I'm so glad you made that meaning for me. It's really interesting because let's start even from yesterday. I was meeting up with some speaker friends, some of whom I haven't met for like 5 or 6 years, because the last 3 years I was situated in the Middle East and was working there. So it took me away from my entrepreneurial consulting and speaking, which I'd been doing for a long time. And they said, wow, you know, goodness, it's great to see you back. And I said, oh, I've got so much to catch up on. And everyone in their own way kind of put their hands on my shoulders and said, girl, you've got it all. People would want all that you have. All you need to do is just take off. And I said, well, I need to kind of get the chassis back together. And they said, shh. I said, how about some wind beneath your wings? Shh. You're already there. Just stop talking yourself down. And it was a real validation. So I'll take you all the way back then, you know, from
Please.
From why that was so important, a hallmark for me. Because when I was 6 years old, I'm one of, at that time, 2 daughters, but I now have 2 other sisters as well, so there's 4 girls. But at that time was only 2 of us, and I think my 3rd sister was just born. I remember playing in the kitchen of my great-grandmother, right? So it's not even my grandmother. It's my great-grandmother. I was very fortunate to have, at that time, 2 great-grandmothers still alive. This great-grandmother is the mother of my father. So
I'm following.
Okay.
Mother of the mother of the mother of your father.
Well, really, so it's basically my father's grandmother.
Yes.
Yeah. So she's a very stoic woman, and I'm going to do something that I still remember. She likes to sit on one of those tall stools, and she'll put her foot up because it was really comfortable. So, and she's very fit. She walks very fast, and I always remember always looking up and how did she gallop down, you know? And she doesn't run. She's got this really straight-faced glasses, and she was looking at me. I didn't notice her until she asked me this question. She said, Yvonne, or she calls me Awan. Awan, you are 6 years old, right? I mean, she was speaking to me in Cantonese.
Okay.
So she was saying that, you know, I was sitting in the kitchen in Ipoh because my parents are born in Ipoh. My great-grandmother comes from China, and I was born in Australian. So I'm a mixed-up kid. But I'm sitting there in her kitchen, and she said, "You're going to school next year?" And I said, "Yeah," and I'm really excited. So she said, "Well, you know, it's a really tough world." And I'm there just ignoring her, playing with my dolls. Now, I want to zoom in on my dolls, because this is really important. Have you, as a child, taken some cardboard and made a figure of a girl?
Of course. We all do.
Right?
We all do that. Yes.
And then we cut it out, and then we draw clothes and shoes.
And then you put the clothes, you stick it, or yes.
Correct.
It's like one of the first collages that we do.
That's correct. And then you change clothes and you do that. And I was really proud of my paper dolls, because it's all me, and I did it all myself. You know, nobody helped. So
it's amazing. Everything yourself when you're 6.
I know.
Means so much.
It means so much, exactly. So she then said, well, are you still going to be playing with those dolls when you go to school, right? And I said, nobody and nothing stands between my dolls and me. Now, I'll backtrack to her history. I mean, at that time, of course, as a young girl, you only saw your great-grandmother as the woman that's who she is. But her backstory is that she was widowed rather young. She had my grandmother as a little girl in tow. not many people know her story, except that she came to Malaya from China, and she had a tough life, because it's a man's world. So when you come
Especially
into...
at that time, I mean, still a man's world, but at that time, even more
Yes,
so.
yes. So being an immigrant woman, she had 3 choices of work. Seamstress, which she didn't choose. Maybe she wasn't good at sewing, I don't know. Prostitution, right?
Interesting choice.
Interesting choice, right? I mean, again, they were not educated enough to teach, so prostitution was a natural thing, and I think she was of such a woman that she wouldn't do such things. And the third thing that she could do was she could run a business, right? So she did, and goodness knows how she did it, but she actually apparently had
career choices, I must say.
And for a woman at that time to do that, in a very harsh, difficult world, in a new world, she had then this strength of character to just start a business. I think she sold cigarettes. And then I think apparently she might have snuck some opium as well. So, in a way...
You had really fun grandmother. This must be an interesting place to grow up in.
This is in hindsight. But when you think about it, you know, if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. So she probably... I mean, if she had it, she probably sold the opium to the brothel. I mean, you know what I mean.
Of course.
Right. But the thing is, so she was an independent woman, but lived in a very, very harsh world. And I can now look back and see why she was so stern. She hardly smiles. She's got a straight back. She's very fit. And she moves fast because, you know, in that world, you have to do everything yourself. So from that perspective... which of course I didn't understand, because I was a privileged girl. You know, I didn't have to worry about my next meal. I was going to school. I was playing with paper dolls. Now, she was my first coach. She was inspiring because instead of telling me about her world, which I didn't find out until after she'd passed away, she then watched me for a while, and then she went into the kitchen, or rather she lit the stove, you know, as if to cook. Yep. Which was always normal. Then she came and just swept up my dolls, walked to the stove, and shoved it in the fire. Now, how do you think I'm thinking about that right now? I felt this brimming hatred come through me. I felt anger. I felt really so bitter, knowing that she's meant to love me, and she's doing this to me. So I remember thinking, at 6 years old, I made a decision. I would never, ever let anybody else in the world feel that way about me. So I'm going to go in the world and be totally loved and liked and approved of, which, in a way, was the story of my success. Because I started to learn about people, and I started to learn how to get to persuade and influence them to the things that matter to them. So I was very well liked. Which, like I said, is the secret of my success. But one of the key things, though, was over time...
What is the price for that being very well liked?
Correct. The prize is I was successful because whatever people enunciated and felt I could do, I did it. I pleased them. So if I could get the marks, I did the marks. If they said, you know what, you should be doing this, then I did it. So I didn't really know what I wanted. I always kind of gauged the opinions of others before I did it. But I excelled in whatever I did because I was there. Actually, I had a cause to never be disliked. Very strong. So when you think about a woman who had lived in a hostile world, she showed me a hostile world. For someone who loved me, she showed me the world. She didn't tell me about the world. And I made that decision myself, which grew into my success. So in a way, she made me, right? She made me. We lost her 3 years later. I was 9 when she passed away. But I remember about 10 years ago, I started to question myself as there were little moments of rebelliousness in my life. I remembered 3, actually.
Why 10 years ago? Is there anything? What happened 10 years ago?
Okay, what happened 10 years ago? Can we come back to that? come back to that question because it's really important that I just finish off this part. Because I realized that the little rebelliousness in me brought out parts where I did choose to do things myself. So the little thing like, I was getting such good marks, people say, why don't you become a medical doctor? And because everybody expected me to be a medical doctor, I did dentistry. So that it was doctoring, but on my own terms, right? People used to frown upon dentists because they were people that nobody wanted to go to. So I said, I'm going to hold the course. I'm going to make dentists loved.
I'm going to be the most beloved dentist.
Which in a way, there's a whole stream of things in my dental career that, we could cover on that. And there was another time too, even a little bit younger, when there was a teacher that was very dictatorial. And I remember coming back to dinner, I said to my dad, we are a very smart class of girls in maths and science, because in Malaysia at that time I was going to school. You went to, I think, third form, and then you do a public exam where they graded you into the smarties and the not so smarties. And the smarties went to maths and science, and the ones that were not so good went to literature and arts. And I don't see what the logic was. Doesn't mean that just because you didn't get the smarts that you were creative. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. But anyway, so we were in this maths and science class, and the teacher and there was this new math that was on, with the Venn diagrams, and she was a very old-fashioned teacher. So in order to hide her vulnerabilities, she said, go to this exercise, do it, and you're so smart you can do it. So I went to tell my dad, and I said, I'm really concerned that we've told her, and she's not going to do anything about it. We're having a quiz, and I think a lot of us are really uncomfortable because we're all high achievers, and we don't think we've ever failed an exam before. So he said, well, have you ever shown her that we said we've told her many times. Well, maybe we need to show her. And a little ding, came in my sense.
So what happens in this moment here?
I want to ask we all have to be in this all together. It's like the High School Musical. We're all in this together. Anyway, so I said to my classmates, I stood up, I said, I know we're going to have this math test today, and none of us are really prepared for it because there's a lot of things that I think we don't understand. So how many of you would say that it would probably be the worst quiz you'll ever do? And everybody put up their hands. So I said, well,
he is the speaker and facilitator in the high school. How many of you?
I know! It was just naturally me. And then I said, okay, how about this? I said, we can't do it alone because she's going to pick on one of us. What if we all showed her that we didn't understand, but instead of just doing a few questions, why don't we just hand in a blank sheet? She'll be wondering why the best class in the whole of the school can't do a math test. And they say, brilliant, let's do that. But we all have to be in this together, because anybody doesn't do it, then, it falls down. So they all handed in blank sheets. So and she was wondering why we were just twiddling thumbs, but she came and collected the papers, and then she marched up to the staff room, and then she bounced back in, and she says, what is this? Is this a joke? Is this a joke? Who is responsible for this, right? And everybody shut up. And in fact, a couple of girls stood up and said, we're all in this together. We've been trying to tell you, we don't understand, so we need to show you. And it basically carried on till the PTA and the principal knew about it. And basically, she was removed from her position, and we got a good maths teacher. And I thought that was the first time I actually did something for myself.
So what did it teach? What did it teach you
about myself?
Who you are and how you interact with the world?
Yeah, well, again, I think I still wanted to be liked.
Okay.
Right, so I was still protecting the tribe. But at the same time, there was that niggliness of being able to push back, that I don't have to do everything everybody's way, that I could be a leader, I could be doing all these things. So there was that little inkling. So, but it doesn't always surface. And I always beat myself up about not being creative, about not being, I can follow process. If somebody tells me what I need to do, I'll do it. So going forward to, I guess, 10 years ago.
Yes, that's the question that they ask, right? When you said 10 years ago, you had this moment when you start asking yourself all those questions about you and life. So,
yeah, so
why
yes. Do I want to be so
what
to
happened?
others? What happened? I was at that time married for about 13 years then. We had children late, so my little girl was just almost 3, and my little boy, my little boy was almost 3, and my little girl was almost 1. And I was, when I got married with my husband, we were equals. We were on a pathway together. He's smart, he's funny, and he was kind of a little bit of an adventurer. I was a bit of a luxury liver. We kind of taught each other things, and we grew together. It was beautiful. But something happened around probably when we had the kids. It was 7 years into our marriage, and when we had the kids, what happened was I took myself out of the business because we were both dentists, so we were running a really successful business together. And we were business partners as well as life partners. And I chose to stay at home, which was really odd because when I thought about it, I once said to myself, my mother's a stay-at-home mom, and sometimes she's got really low self-esteem because all her daughters went to university and had really good careers. So I wondered why I became her.
I wonder how that happens with us. We grow up and we look at our parents, and some things we love, and some things we say, I will never be that way. And then suddenly, in the middle of the life, that's exactly what happens.
Correct. And then I remember one day, I was doing my dentistry, and then I was very pregnant, and I told my patients, when I drop this load, I'll be back 3 months. I'll have a crate in the corner. I run the business. I should be fine. But when the child was born, I wanted so much to be with him. And there's a whole story around the birth as well, because I was really concerned about being a good parent. But anyway, so
Who isn't? The famous mother's guilt.
I know. This is a whole story line as well around that. So I wanted so much to spend time with him. So I decided to stay home. So it was as simple as that. And as I decided to stay home, the whole imprinting of the Asian wife and the Asian woman started to take over. It crept up on me. I didn't even realize.
How do you define that? Because I think that's fascinating moment. So what? Because all until then, right? You kind of had your own life, and you were successful, and you were doing what you want, and you were enough. You were aware enough to understand that you also want to live your own life, and at the same time you wanted to be a good mom, right? And then, so what happened with that? What you said, Asian imprint for women.
I know, and like I said, it crept up on me, and I didn't really realize that until a few incidents happened. So again, let's back up a little bit again. So when I fell pregnant with my son. Again, subliminally, I was very uncomfortable, even though we've been trying to have kids. So, not very hard, but I just kind of...
Practicing. Everybody loves practice.
Practicing was fun. And in fact, I'll tell you this aside, this is a funny one. My mother-in-law goes, hey, is there something wrong? This was 3rd year into our marriage. Is there a problem that we haven't got grandkids? And I said, come here, I'll tell you. I said, well, I've had myself tested. I'm fine. Why don't you talk to your son? Shut her up. Like, it's never the son's problem, it's me. So that shut her up for another couple of years.
Until you had kids eventually.
No, we were having such a good time running our business. We were traveling, and we thought it could wait. But anyway, we did say that one day we were going to have kids. So when the time came and I fell pregnant, I was so upset. I couldn't believe when I did the urine test and it came up positive, and I did it again, and then I went to the doctors for a blood test to make sure I was pregnant. And I remember Barbara Peretz, that was her name, and Dr. Peretz said to me, the good news is you're pregnant. And most people would celebrate, right? Because she knew that we'd been married for 7 years at that time. And in her office, I burst into tears. How? And she goes, this is the first case of antenatal depression, right? I mean, it's not postnatal, this is antenatal depression, what's going on? And I remember saying this really clearly. And again, now looking back, amazing insight from my unconscious. my life is ended as I know it. And she said, what do you mean? I said, once I have the baby, when I become a mother, my whole life is gone the way I know it. I will have a being totally dependent on me. My body would have changed. I just can't fathom not being in control of my life, because up until now, it's all me, 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 really. Maybe me and my husband, but you notice I said me first, right? But you know, and at that time we were equals, like I said. So I think subliminally I must have known. But anyway, so about...
But it's a big change.
It's a huge change. And I thought I had 9 months to work up to it. So I thought I would...
The nature is considerate, right? It does give you 9 months to prepare.
Yes. But I started being intellectual about it. I researched as many books as I could, any courses on parenting. And of course, there's no one prescribed book. So I had to decide, and I said, okay, I'm going to make sure that my life is now a laboratory. It's going to be a social experiment. I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to see myself as an experiment. I'll notice how I'm feeling. I'm going to journal it. And when my child is born, I'm going to learn about him or her. That's it. Social experiment, full stop, okay? And if I make any mistakes, I'll just write it down. It's like a science experiment, right? Okay.
How long did it last?
I felt better, and kind of long story short, I was still very worried about my last trimester. I had my blood pressure raised really high. So my doctor said, you know, be careful. So very close to the pregnancy, he said, I'm going to check you in, and we're going to induce the pregnancy because your blood pressure is too high. So, and as the contractions increased, and I wanted to have a natural birth, I said, don't cut me open. But he said, the pressure is so high. He said that you got to have an epidural. What? I can't have a natural birth? You need an epidural to bring the pressure down. Okay, I'll have an epidural. So that took effect, and the blood pressure was still not coming down. But in my mind, I think I was just so worried about the transition. I'm now going to be a mother. Mm-hmm. Nothing will be the same again.
How did you deal with that, besides journaling?
I'm having my contractions. It's probably into the second hour, and my doctor said, "Well, we've got to get ready the OR because he's going to fetal distress, and you could have a stroke."
How having children,
yes,
right, changed the whole dynamic with your husband?
Correct.
So what happened there?
What happened there? I think, first of all, for the first time, we can have a focus outside of ourselves. So my son, when he was born, was also the first grandchild on both sides. So we started focusing on him. And one of the key things, like I said, because I was so concerned about being a great parent, and I wasn't. I thought I was, because I wanted to be perfect. When he was born, and like I said, as he was coming through, I was talking to him before. I said, I do not want to be cut open. Can you please just help me out here? And he's very, very compliant. And we pushed through. We didn't need to go into OR. And as he came through, it was almost we had a little conversation. Like I have a strong bond with Jet. He and I have a very special relationship. And he almost spoke to me like, Mother, don't worry about my destiny. My destiny is mine. You can't change it no matter whether you're a good parent or a bad parent. You were in the playground a bit earlier than me, so be a tour guide and just show me. That's all. That's all you can do. So don't worry. Don't fret. And it was almost a relief. So when he was born, my blood pressure completely went down. Everything was okay. And he and I had a great bond. And when he was born, I realized that the book I needed to read.
Because you also wrote a book, right? I mean, you did write a book about parenting.
Correct, exactly. And the reason why I did was when I looked at the child that was born, I said, there's my secret. If I read him like a book, I'll be able to deal with him. And the funny thing is that as I started to read his book, I had to read my book, which I hadn't turned to since I was 6 years old, because I was always reading other people's books. So I'm very good at reading other people. So reading my child wasn't hard. So I thought, wow, but to force myself to read, because I can't let a child lead my family. So I had to read my book, and that began the book. Intentional Parenting was a book that grew out of the fact that I didn't know how to parent. So the best way was to read the book that's your child. And if you're a leader in your family, you need to be firm with yourself, but you also be able to flex to know the needs of your family. And the only way you can do that is to collaborate with them. And now, I guess you look at the leadership things that we are looking at, it's no longer control and command like the old days, right? Mm-hmm. It's more collaborative. So it's about letting your smart people be smart. All you do is hold the vision and the values and just let them play in those boundaries. And that's exactly what I did. So that basically now was born a book that became a business book in Amazon. It's not listed as a parenting book.
The parenting book became a business book. That's a twist.
Yeah, no, so it was written as a parenting book, but I was using it so much in my coaching and training that I used the frameworks of modeling that, what I did with my children, as a coaching framework for leaders. So, and it was a very simple language, so anybody can pick it up. So if you look at the family as the initial tribe, where your first leader is actually your parents. Even if they died before, in a way, when you were born, they were the first leader in your life. And to me, and I still didn't have any accolades, I didn't think I was that fabulous. So I didn't realize why I didn't do that. I at first relegated it to the fact that I wanted to please everyone. But I also felt that when the child was born, and I started to focus on something other than dentistry, and I had now a new focus. And the growth in me allowed me to have a confidence in myself that I can express myself, but I was still trying to suppress it. Because on the other hand, I think my husband, he's very competent and he's a real smart boy. But what happened is now, at least we're not competing in the same ground. He now says, well, you come out of the business, I got to escalate the business. So he focused a lot on the business. So we have no time for us. Mm-hmm. And even though we tried to have date nights and all that, our relationship changed. I became a mother. I became I focused my life on that. I focused on some of that development for myself. And I think what started as a hobby business, because I was passionate about love. I was passionate about learning. I was passionate about loving people, learning. I realized that there was something in me that I didn't love enough. Mm-hmm. So I was seeking love of others.
Yeah, of course, for their approval.
Right,
yes.
for their approval. But I didn't realize that at that time. So as my star started to shine and my book actually was printed, I remember here, I was doing a presentation in Bangkok and I heard my phone buzz and I turned it around. My husband had written in block capitals things around like, how dare you write this book about me as a villain? And it was just like in block capitals. And
So he clearly didn't approve the book.
Yeah. So I turned it over and I thought, my goodness. So anyway, I finished my program. I rang him and I said, what was that all about? He said, I just picked up your book and I read it for the first time. And you're looking like an angel and I'm the devil. And how dare you do this? You know, this can be the cause of the end of our marriage. And I looked, how can I be so blind? And I said, you were always open to read my book before we published it. I always asked you to. But you said to me, you wait till the video comes out because you don't like to read. I said, even my daughter had read it and proofread it. So I said, if there was something you didn't approve of or it looked biased, you could have told me. But I never wrote you as a villain. I said, we both actually look like little uncomfortable codgers because we were so uncomfortable with parenting.
Correct. And become parents.
and we were learning from the kids. Almost the kids look like the wise ones. And so I said that, and it was really funny. I just realized that how little communication had occurred in my marriage and how much competition, like now suddenly this book was being, and Random House published it, so it wasn't even self-published. I was doing a book tour. I was doing all that. So it was becoming, I was coming up of my own right. And
yet it's tormented your marriage.
And so therefore it became a competition. And I felt that I had to dumb myself down so that my marriage needed to survive, but I didn't think about that consciously. So 10 years ago, a couple of things happened, one of which, and it's funny how the universe hits you in the face, and I won't share this because it's quite private, but there was a couple of lessons in my marriage that was basically saying to me, you are not honoring you and he's not honoring you. You need to move on. But I didn't even see it. You know, like you get so blind to it that you...
Yeah, I
you
know. I'm in my second marriage, so hopefully it's gonna last forever. But I am in my second marriage,
Right.
so I know.
Yeah, and no blame on him. I mean, obviously I was trying to keep the marriage together, and our world started to crumble. He spent, and I approved it because I was kind of the grounded person. So as he started to build that business, and we invested, and the cash flow was not so good, but we grew the business really quickly. And without seeing the signs, with the subprime children of Australia, because when the crash came, we had so much debt that, of course, business dived a little, but
They're applauding for you, I guess.
when the business dived, they applaud. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Then my whole world started to crumble. So I took a job. So aside from my hobbying, which was actually being very successful, I was headhunted to go to the Middle East to do this leadership development thing, which was in a way for me to get some regular income, put the family back together, and for us to take my husband away from what he saw was a crumbling world that he was responsible for, which he wasn't. We both made decisions. But as we went away, he landed in the Middle East and he said, "We're doing this for your career, you know," and totally couldn't see that we needed to have some income. But I hate it here. So he actually chose to live back in Sydney. And I lived with the kids in the Middle East. They were really happy in school there. And he traveled once every month to see them for 10 days. But that ability to be distant now started to allow me to see what was happening, because I started finding my freedom. I could be on my own self. There wasn't that oppressive feel and it wasn't him, it was just the environment. I started to see, wow, my marriage died 10 years ago. And I didn't realize it. And now in my own time, in the desert, I'm a flower blooming. In the Middle East, as a woman,
Interesting, in the Middle East as a woman, that irony.
I found my freedom. I suddenly realized that there was some part in me that now began to love herself a little bit more. And as I found that love in me, I realized that I loved him enough because he's still the father of my kids, but I don't love him. I love him enough to let him go, because if he stayed on, we'll kill each other. Because now that with that realization, I'd have to dump myself back down to get back. So when my assignment ended in the Middle East, I then took the courage to tell him I no longer wish to be married. And he was shocked. He couldn't believe it. But one of the key things, like I said, as I walk away from my marriage, and I'm still going through the throes of divorce settlements and all that. My kids are staying with him at the moment. But they've been wonderful. Certainly my son has been wonderful. He can see that he loves both his parents, and things didn't work out. My daughter is choosing sides at the moment, saying that, "Mom, how can you leave Dad? You know, I need you as a teenage daughter. You should be home, right?" But I think she would have done that even if I was home,
She
right?
would.
So, and she's a very strong-willed woman and young woman, and so I just went, wow, okay, the journey actually is now. I need to make a stand for myself. What is important for me? And I took a deep breath, and I suddenly remembered my great-grandmother. And I remember seeing those paper dolls burning. And my decision to be loved so much that I didn't love myself. It was kind of, I have a duty to kind of protect myself, so therefore I dare not look inside, because if someone could love me and burn that, I'm not worthy. So I took a deep breath and I went, oh no. She never told me that. I made that decision. That woman loved me. She could only do what she could to show me. So what if instead, when I was 6 years old, I stood back from the fire and I put my hands on my hips, stamped my feet and said, "Good old granny, do your worst, burn them." That's just Paper Dolls 1.0. Show you, Paper Dolls 2.0. It's going to be more beautiful. Burn them 3.0. Burn them 4.0. Right. Game on, right? And then I thought, wow. So I lit a candle to my great-grandmother and I said, "I'm so sorry. I've had this negative relationship to you, because what you've shown me is a way to handle my life. It trapped me in my seeking of love from the external sense, when my inner love for myself was nothing. So it was duty over love. I had a duty to make sure I perform for society, but I had no duty on myself. So my next book is going to be written on love over duty. So I'm now experimenting with the fact that, thank you, great-grandmother, in order for me to go to the next place, I need to find love in myself, which I have. And as my life changes now, I'm creating Paper Dolls 2.0. She burnt them because they weren't good enough. In a way, I deserve to recreate myself, not by a paper doll to please others, but to make things and products that please me. But in pleasing me, it's like a processional effect. The bee goes to the nectar to get it to sustain, to go back to make the honey, right? Yeah. But the pollen sticks on the feet of the bee, and he goes from flower to flower, and it's nature's pollination mechanism that gives us fruits and flowers and ongoing the beauty and magnificence of our world. But the bee didn't go out there to pollinate. He went for the sweet stuff. And when he went for the sweet stuff to go back and do his duty, he's had meaningful pollination of the world. So in finding the sweet stuff for me, I've actually attracted so much amazing stuff in my life.
What is your sweet stuff?
My sweet stuff.
I just love how it sounds. Sweet
stuff. Sweet stuff is going for what you are passionate about. I mean, the word passion spells in 3 words: pass I on. Now, if you've got your passion frozen in yourself, which was where I was, I wouldn't even love myself. The melting in my heart was the beginning of the sweet stuff of allowing my own love and passion for myself to find out what I love. And then passion is frozen if you don't express it. So finding a way of expressing the love of doing. And I love speaking. I love going out there and telling stories. I love these conversations. I love people. When I'm in the front of a room and I feel their energy, they energize me, and I hope that my stories energize them. So that's the sweet stuff. And if I can keep doing that, I know that in the course of my just loving to speak and talk about things and about my learning, I mean, I haven't created the new cure for cancer. I haven't created Apple like Steve Jobs. I haven't, become a Mandela and grew a country. And I haven't become, even Audrey Hepburn, who's a classic, I think she's so...
Everybody loves Audrey, come on, you have to give it to her.
So my sense is that probably Audrey did her sweet stuff, and the legacy is that we love her, and we love her for all the things she did with UNICEF. I'm the same. I hope I keep doing what I love, and the love that I have of myself, expressed into the work that I love, will hopefully help people find that love of themselves, that they might go out there and do something sweet, because in going for that sweet stuff, they're going to do major stuff that they're not even aware of.
Like the bee.
Like the bee. So I'm like the bee. So I want to thank my great-grandmother for actually showing me rather than telling me, and for me to find my way. And I hope that people do the same. That and even the lessons, all these tough lessons that we have, I believe it's nature's way of saying, you're ready. This is too easy for you. Give you something to learn so that...
Create 2.0, 3.0.
Exactly. Like when we do gamification, right? When we play a computer game, we don't say like, oh, well, I'll just lose this so that I can stay in level 1. You want to beat level 1 to go to the next, so you keep trying. So this is it. Parenting, Paper Dolls 1.0 was, so she burnt it and I gave up. I mean, what sort of a stupid thing was I doing? It took me 40 years to learn that. So to me...
I'm glad you did.
And now, world, Paper Dolls 2.0, I'm expressing myself, and who knows, at some new level, I'm going to learn about Paper Dolls 3.0. And I must admit that, as I have loved myself, I have genuinely felt love of my work that is not something I went out to get. Mm-hmm. And like I said, going back all the way back to yesterday.
So for the women out there who might find themselves in these circumstances where they're not fully aware of who they are and they don't quite know what their spirit wants, is there any message that you could pass on to them that will help them to find that path towards themselves and maybe help them to make choices and understand what is that sweet stuff that is meant for them to do in this life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one of the key things is watch children. Watch children. And that's where I think my breakthrough of finding myself began. Children have got no limited beliefs, cramping their style. They're pure souls that have come through, pure new skin as well. They try things, they don't give up. So just looking at my two children actually revived my inner spirit. And looking at my daughter now, I look to her as an older soul almost, because she has this assertiveness that I wish I had at 6 or 7 when I could have stood up to my great-grandmother, right? But in actually having brought her up, I think she helped me reflect that spirit into seeing that 2.0. I think it's been a genesis. So one of the things I said is don't be impatient. The right time always comes. It's been a laboratory of learning for me, nothing of which I would do different if I had to live my life again. So when the things come, always remember, hold on to a faith of doing something, even no matter how small, that you love. Always have time for children, because they're always great role models of how possibility is possible. So my sense is that the book I'm writing at the moment is called Love Over Duty. It's about studying my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, myself, and my daughter as 5 generations of women who have a lot of things that are similar because those lessons haven't been learned. So my daughter carries the burden because I may not even be conscious of what we need to learn. And when I talk about the women's stream, I'm not just ignoring the men, because there's a feminine streak in a lot in men as we have the male streak in us.
Of course, it's male and female energy in every human being.
And I know my success has been a male energy, but I'm now tuning into my yin essence because this is what the world needs. So my daughter carries through some lessons that I hope she will learn. But I'm also scribing the tough decisions, the courage that my great-grandmother did, bringing up my grandmother and showing me that hostile world without telling me. That is so mature as a really evolved leader. Some people get say like, oh, that was rotten. But that is very true to form what leaders need to do. So if I can encourage people to look at their lives as a movie or a strand of history by which they can learn from. All of us are a book. So read your book. Read your book that's yourself. Don't be afraid to see the deep, dark secrets, because those are where the beautiful lessons will come. And I really believe that Paper Doll Incident 1.0 is the key incident of darkness that has shone a brilliant light onto my life. And it's taken me 40 years. I hope you guys are faster. Right? So that might be the message. So just to reiterate, go for the sweet stuff. Go for possibility. Look at children. Play in nature, because we can learn a lot from that. And don't forget your history. There's things to learn from there, because you are now going to create a future that you want.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And here we are living more privileged lives, and we are like feeling so upset and broken, and not saying that we're not entitled to our pain, we are, but I think sometimes we put yourself in someone else's shoes, in a perspective of an 8-year-old who has been raped repeatedly and she wants to save the world. I'm like, I should do more.
Did it help
Of course it did. It'd be like, you know what, Loretta, at least you're not being raped and beaten on a daily basis. You've just gone through something incredibly difficult, but it's one-off, and you're going to get better, and you're going to get yourself stronger, and you're going to make sure you're going to help everybody that you can.